All right, y'all, welcome to the second lesson here in September. I thought I'd touch on some synthy things today. And I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about how I use things like distortion, overdrive, fuzz, etc., kind of like gainy effect things on synths, because I think there's some interesting interactions that you can get. When you hear guitar play with a fuzz pedal or an overdrive, obviously it shifts the tone and it's reacting in a specific way. But I think there's some interesting things that you can accomplish with a synth, in combination with those pedals. So I wanted to start with, this is the Pro 3. Some of you won't have a synth that can do this, but you can also experiment with this by like running a plug-in, like if you have Ableton or something like that. Just use like whatever free synth, analog synthy kind of thing you have on there. Again, OBXD makes a nice free one. And then put like distortion effects after it, and you'll be able to kind of simulate these things. But I'm starting with just a basic, this is a monophonic board. And I'm starting with just a basic sawtooth wave. And what I want to do is, on this particular board, there's actually like a few different versions of kind of overdrive and distortion and stuff like that. It does have a filter drive that just kind of pushes the filter a little bit. I'm going to use more of the distortion and this like tuned feedback thing that has a grunge effect on it. But one of the first things to try, in my recommendation with fuzzes and distortions is reacting to like having it in place and then doing things with the filter set to like a high resonance. So when we set a high resonance, like a higher resonance, you can kind of hear it in the filter. It's accentuating like a certain part of the signal, right? Which you can hear. So the cool thing is that when you start pushing the distortion or having the distortion push that in a way, you get kind of these like weird reactions from the synth sometime, and it happens differently with every synth. But like you'll notice if I turn the distortion all the way up on here, it's kind of like thinning the tone out a little bit. And if you add resonance, you notice that the sweep isn't as clear. Like it kind of reacts in this like weird, it just makes it messy. So I think that adding fuzz or distortion to something like this on a synth can kind of give you these like weird responses to the way the synth is coming back at you, weird responses to the way the filter is, coming at you, that can be interesting. So, obviously this is going to be more hearable, like if we're automating the cutoff knob. So I'm going to do like a little filter envelope, and we're just going to play around with it a little bit and kind of see what we can end up with. So this is like filter envelope that goes pretty high up, maybe too high up. I'm gonna make this a square wave too, because I like down an octave. So that's pretty rad. Let's add some release just to give it like a weird bouncy effect. The other reason I kind of like effects like this on, and I'm going to try the other one here in a second, but on filter moves is that, when you're playing these kind of like phrases where sometimes the filter effect disappears, like you notice if I play this low enough, you hear that filter movement. But when I'm playing it high enough, there's not actually enough frequency movement with the resonance to really like have you hear any combination of distortion and resonance effect. So you get these phrases where it kind of like, you get these like kind of weirder effects, and then as you go up the board, they kind of disappear. So it makes your keyboard seem like less monotonous. Like this is something I think about synths that can get, it can get a little annoying to me, at least in my ears. Maybe annoying is the wrong word. It gets a little boring to me sometimes. Is if you're just hearing the same tone over and over. And I think, if I were to make a lead patch like this, you're like there. You can kind of like you have a little subtle shift in phrasing between the low half and the top half. So even if I'm playing quick lines, like even there, it's like you hear it, and then you don't really hear it as much, right? So that can be a cool thing. And with this type of interaction, the more intense the overdrive distortion-y kind of vibe, if you're using some kind of like metal, like a pedal that would be used in like a metal band or something. Like I remember trying this with like a rat pedal, which I think is a fuzz, but like that kind of trick, it makes it really like way more noticeable and way more intense. So there's a thing on this board called tuned feedback that kind of acts as like a really intense kind of overdriven sound just by nature of the tuned feedback thing that's happening. And even here, like I'm going to turn this filter release down so it resets quicker, but like you're getting this kind of effect that like, it's still obviously a filter sound, but it's like reacting. Like even, again, like at the top of the board, like sounds cool, sounds driven, but then down here, right? So that can be kind of cool stuff to play with. Another thing that I like really messing with, and this may be a little trickier for you to experiment with depending on the type of boards you have, but is when you can get into having like waveforms that you can cycle through. Distortion makes them react really interesting. So what I mean by that, there we go, as I totally lose sound. Where'd I go? Okay, so on this, on the Pro 3, there's a section on here where you can get into some like digital oscillators. So, you have your kind of normal analog subtractive synth shapes like sawtooth, supersaw, pulse, triangle, sine wave, blah, blah, blah. But then you get these other shapes, like this one is called sequential, which if I play it and then scroll through the sound, like you actually hear the word sequential. So these things, you can kind of tell what's going to happen is that when we make them really distorted or really messed up, you get some interesting things happening. So let me take this down a octave. Never mind, it already was down. And then I'm going to turn that feedback option just a little bit, just see where we're at. So I'm super angry. Okay, so what we can do, obviously you're kind of seeing me scroll through it by hand. Let's have something that automates this for us. So what that would be is an envelope, an auxiliary envelope. So on this board, I'll go to aux1 destination, and I'm going to choose oscillator 3 shape mod, which is this button. And then I'm going to have like a slow opening thing that stays. And I'm going to have it recover quick too. Yes. So that kind of sound, especially if we, you notice we still have the resonance up, so we're getting that high end that's interacting with the kind of grungy feedback thing happening too. If we add something to this, let's add like a square wave down low. Make that move quicker. Oh, sorry, attack. So what I did there is I changed where it was starting in the shape. Yeah, I kind of like the grunge better on this one. So, it's probably weird to explain what's happening there. And the honest answer is that the cool thing about using these kind of like grungy, overdriven things is that you never really can really know how they're going to react to certain movements, right? And so essentially the thought process behind this that I'm taking is like, I'm just giving it something to react to, right? And if I turn both of these off 0, if I turn resonance off, just by itself, there's a lot of like this thing happening. And so the more shape to the sound there is, the more things the, distortion-y or the kind of like signal pushers can kind of deal with. Oh, I forgot to turn the envelope off. No, I didn't. Never mind. Like even a little bit, like there's like 42 little distortion. It already like sounds different. Ooh, there's nasty. Like you can still kind of hear the word sequential, but it's like gnarly, right? And then you find parts of it that you like. So honestly, if I was building this sound right now to use for y'all, I would probably start an envelope from here, add like a little bit of amount. So there, now we're simulating this, right? Let's add that square wave back in. That's killing. What if we add some resonance? And a filter envelope. That's gnarly. Okay, so there's a couple things we can do. Let's get back to a basic patch. Another thing that I really like playing with the distortion, and this is going to be, I should have shown you this on a polyphonic board, but I think I can make it happen on here. So, let's see, let's do global basic pruning. So we're bringing up this basic sawtooth wave. Okay, and what I like to do with these things, another trick I like to mess with is like messing with minor second intervals with distortions and fuzzes, because the bleating that you normally hear. So for instance, if we have two sawtooth waves, and we have them kind of like subtly out of tune with one another, you hear that kind of like that thing, the wah 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 wah, and the farther you get out of tune, the faster it gets. So you guessed it, the distortion or the signal pusher that's going to affect that is going to make that way more cool, way more intense. So let's add distortion to that. And let's add a little overdrive too. Oh, that's shape. So where this can be cool, I mean, I love playing leads like that because I'm a weirdo. Like, I love that kind of shit, but if you want some more like kind of practical application for it, this kind of thing can kind of lead you to some interesting like noise drones. So what we're gonna do is let's do like a little LFO on oscillator 2 pitch. So oscillator 2, on here there's coarse frequency, which is like big changes in fine frequency, but we're just gonna do fine frequency, little amount, slow frequency. Okay, so there you're hearing the like bleating kind of like come in and out. And I love this kind of thing, especially if you add some like effects to it. So let's add like a delay and a verb. Okay, and then a reverb. Let's take it down an octave. I'm gonna push the filter a little bit too. So, this is one of those things where you're kind of getting this like uneasy feeling of the two pitch differences kind of like beating up against one another. It's kind of like pushing that feeling, right? Like especially if I get the distortion like more intense. I love that. So that's some like scoring stuff, even like fading into that with. Let's try the resonance thing now that we have this in play. So again, like distortion and overdrive. I think the point that I kind of want to sum this up with is that like it's not only going to accentuate your signal and make things sound, like make solo patches sound more gnarly and make, leads and basses kind of like bite a little harder. But I think it's important to keep in mind that it's also going to like push a lot of these like kind of, slightly uneasy things. Like it's going to push like the bleeding of pitches. It's going to push the resonance like in a way that you're going to get these kind of reactions with all the chips in the board. And they kind of lead to like, honestly, they're a little unpredictable. And I think that's something that we could all use a little more of with, synthesis in general is like, how can we make this thing react to me in a way that I don't really know and that then I have to react to it? Because honestly, like, I think there's a sub theme here with me and synths that I really like having a conversation with the board. Like I've we've created this thing. It's in like I'm right now mainly having the distortion stuff interact with the resonance and the LFO, turn the effects off, and like I have no idea when I play this exactly what part of that cycle is going to be happening. And that matters, like when I hear it, it's like, okay, what does this make me want to do? Like even there, I'm like messing with the pitch bend, and it's making it growl in a way that I didn't even think, Now, obviously, if you're trying to play like a jazz gig or something like that, that might not be the best call. So obviously, there's scenarios for all of these things. But I would urge you, to experiment. Get on, if you don't have a synth, get like the free plugins, get like the OBXD or something like that. And just put like a stock, Ableton or Logic or whatever your Pro Tools, whatever you're using, put like a stock fuzz plugin or distortion plugin. Try messing with resonance. Try adding, we didn't really go into it in this lesson, but like adding like LFOs that do things. So like if we did a thing with the pitch, but like if I made this a really fast LFO. That can lead to some unpredictable cool stuff. So mess around with that. Most boards have some version of this. And also, like if you have a board that doesn't have any effects, you don't have a computer or something, like try just getting like a really cheap distortion pedal. And obviously, honestly, like the more gnarly the pedal, the more gnarly effect is going to be. Like, you could try things like metal zones and all these kind of like, deep metal pedals. Like I think that stuff can be really cool on synth, especially if you're kind of going for more interesting tones, more aggressive.